A woman marked by grief accepts a new job in a mansion where silence weighs heavier than cleanliness. Upon hearing a forbidden cry, she crosses the door and finds a child forgotten by affection. A single plate of pasta and a hug are enough to break a year of silence and solitude. But what seemed like healing reveals a hidden danger, and the truth will have to be recorded to save more than one life. The gardens of the Vane mansion displayed an almost artificial perfection. The white roses, imported from the Netherlands, grew geometrically aligned. The English lawn, trimmed with millimeter precision, showed not a single leaf out of place. The imposing glass and marble structure rose like a monument to wealth and emptiness in West London, surrounded by high walls that isolated it from the rest of the city. Raphael Vane, 42, CEO of the country's largest technology company, VaneTech, observed the landscape from his second-floor office. His deep dark circles betrayed sleepless nights. For 6 months, ever since the tragic accident that took his wife Cecilia, he had practically not left that sanctuary of luxury and solitude. Mr. Vane? Mrs. Eunice, the housekeeper, interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Maurice has arrived for Matthew's session. Raphael nodded without enthusiasm. Matthew, his 7-year-old son, had stopped speaking after his mother's passing. Not only that, the child had completely withdrawn. He didn't play, didn't smile, barely moved spontaneously. He only followed instructions when necessary, like a small automaton. "Tell the doctor I'm coming down," he replied, running a hand through his prematurely graying hair. In the specially equipped therapy room on the ground floor, the boy sat motionless, staring into space. His brown eyes, once vivid and curious, seemed empty. The neurologist, a middle-aged man in an impeccable blazer and Italian-framed glasses, made notes on his electronic tablet. "Any news, doctor?" Raphael asked upon entering. Dr. Maurice Fontaine, considered an eminence in the field of pediatric neurology, adjusted his glasses with a studied gesture. "Mr. Vane, as we've discussed, the tests continue to show no injury or organic cause. I believe we should seriously consider admission to St. Teresa's Specialized Institute. There, with 24-hour monitoring and a full battery of intensive therapies, perhaps we can achieve more significant progress." Raphael looked at his son. 6 months of physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, psychotherapy, consultations with the country's best specialists, and nothing had changed. Perhaps the doctor was right. Perhaps Matthew needed a completely controlled environment, away from the painful memories of that house. "How long of a stay are we talking about?" he asked, feeling a pang of guilt for considering sending his son away. "A minimum of 6 months, possibly a year. A year without his son." The idea made his stomach churn. "But if it was best for Matthew—" "I'll think about it, doctor. Please continue the session." As he left the room, Raphael found Mrs. Eunice in the hallway awaiting instructions. "Eunice, has the new cleaning staff arrived?" "Yes, sir. She's already working upstairs. Her name is Joanna Adams, and she came with excellent references from the agency." "Great. Make sure to explain all the house rules, especially about the locked room. No one enters there?" The housekeeper nodded. At 60, Mrs. Eunice had worked for the Vane family for almost 3 decades. She had seen Raphael grow up, marry, become a father, and now she watched him slowly fall apart. "Mr. Vane," she hesitated, "Matthew's birthday is next week. Would you like me to organize something?" Raphael swallowed hard. His son's last birthday had been a splendid party in the garden, with Cecilia at the piano playing Matthew's favorite songs as the boy blew out the candles. "No, Eunice. There will be no party this year." Later, climbing the stairs to his room, Raphael heard a soft voice humming. Following the sound, he reached the corridor where a brunette woman in her early 40s was cleaning the noble wooden handrail. She wore the grey uniform of the cleaning team, but there was something in her posture that didn't match the job, a serene dignity, almost maternal. "You must be the new staff member," Raphael said, interrupting the song. The woman turned, showing no surprise or embarrassment at being caught singing during work. "Yes, sir. Joanna Adams." Her voice was calm and firm. "Sorry about the singing. It's an old habit." "It's all right. I just ask that you keep the volume down. My son, he needs quiet." Joanna nodded, observing her employer's tired face intently. "I understand, sir. I'll be discreet." Something in the way she looked at him, without the usual fearful deference of employees, but with a kind of calm understanding, left Raphael momentarily disconcerted. "Well, continue your work," he said, walking away. The next day, Dr. Maurice returned with a digital folder full of documents about St. Teresa's Institute. Success graphs, family testimonials, lists of renowned specialists, and an extensive presentation on the pioneering methods applied there. "As you can see, Mr. Vane, it is simply the best option for cases like Matthew's. The facilities are impeccable." Raphael scrolled through the digital documents as the doctor spoke. The cost of the stay was astronomical, but that mattered little. If he could buy his son's cure, he would spend every last penny. "What about visits?" he asked. "Initially, we recommend an adaptation period without visits. Afterwards, once a week in a controlled environment." Raphael felt his heart tighten. He knew the decision was practically made, but something inside him resisted. "I'll analyze the proposal carefully, Doctor. We'll give you an answer by the end of the week." That night, alone in his office, Raphael opened an expensive bottle of Scotch whiskey. His cell phone kept receiving work notifications, but he ignored them all. The company could wait. For months he had been delegating more and more responsibilities, appearing only at absolutely essential meetings. As he contemplated the amber liquid in his glass, he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. He looked at the clock. 10:30 p.m. It was late for the cleaning team to still be working. Opening the office door, he saw Joanna standing in the middle of the hallway. She wasn't carrying cleaning products or equipment. She was just attentively observing Matthew's small, motionless figure, who stood before the large window at the end of the hallway, looking out into the night. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Raphael asked with a hint of irritation. Joanna was not startled by his sudden appearance. "Pardon me, sir. I was leaving when I saw the boy here alone. I just wanted to make sure he was all right." Raphael looked at his son, who hadn't moved an inch or shown any sign of noticing the adult's presence. "He always does this," Raphael said, his voice thick with tiredness and whiskey. "He just stands there looking at nothing. The doctors say it's a form of isolation, of denial of—" He couldn't complete the sentence. Joanna observed the boy carefully and then said in a low voice, "He's not looking at nothing, sir. He's looking at the stars." Raphael turned his eyes to the window, and indeed, London's exceptionally clear sky displayed a carpet of shining stars. "Cecilia loved to show him the constellations," he murmured, almost unaware that he was sharing something so intimate with an employee he barely knew. Joanna merely nodded, as if understanding a deep pain without needing explanations. Then, with an apology, she discreetly withdrew, leaving father and son alone under the starry sky. Raphael stood there, motionless, observing Matthew's small, rigid back, wondering what was going on behind that silence. For a brief moment, he questioned if he was truly doing the right thing by considering sending his son away. But then he remembered the reports, the diagnoses, the unanimous opinions of the specialists. Admission would be best for Matthew. It had to be. Joanna's first week at the Vane mansion was one of silent observation. As she polished furniture, cleaned windows, and organized rooms, her attentive eyes registered details that the specialists, with their expensive equipment and sophisticated theories, had never noticed. Matthew was not a completely absent child as everyone believed. He had routines, preferences, and small reactions that followed patterns. No one seemed to notice that the boy only stepped on the center of the Italian marble floor tiles, as if the grout lines represented some kind of danger, or how he would stop, hidden at the kitchen doorway every morning, just to listen to the sounds of utensils and boiling water, sounds of normalcy, of everyday life. On Thursday, while polishing the handrails on the second floor, Joanna noticed how Matthew's body, usually rigid as a small statue, visibly relaxed when Mrs. Eunice, cleaning Raphael's office, turned on the ambient sound system. It was a piano sonata, soft and melancholic. "Look at that," she murmured to herself. "Music!" On the same day, as she prepared products to clean the bathrooms, she noticed another subtle reaction. Upon opening a bottle of liquid soap with a lavender scent, Matthew, who was passing through the hallway following the nanny who would take him to another therapy session, stopped for an instant. His nostrils flared slightly, and he breathed more deeply as if that aroma awakened something within him. Joanna kept these observations to herself, waiting for the right moment to use them. On Friday afternoon, she found Mrs. Eunice in the utility room separating clothes for the laundry. "How are you adapting, Joanna?" the housekeeper asked with her usual efficiency. "Very well, Mrs. Eunice. The house is beautiful, though a bit—" She hesitated, searching for the right word. "Cold," Eunice completed with a sigh. It wasn't always like this. This house was once full of music and laughter. Joanna carefully folded a towel, thinking about how to approach the subject. "I notice the boy reacts to music. He seems to awaken a little when he hears piano." Mrs. Eunice stopped what she was doing, as if she had been struck by something invisible. "Mrs. Cecilia used to play the piano," she revealed, lowering her voice. "She was a concert pianist before marrying Mr. Vane. She had a grand Steinway piano in the music room. She played every night for Matthew to sleep." "And where is the piano now?" Eunice looked around, making sure they were alone, in the locked room. After she passed, Mr. Vane had everything that reminded him of her locked away. "The piano, the sheet music, the perfumes." She paused, swallowing her emotion. "Lavender. She always wore lavender." The pieces began to fit together in Joanna's mind. It wasn't just a traumatized child. It was a boy whose sensory world had been abruptly interrupted. The aromas, the music, the textures that built his perception of safety and love had all disappeared at once. And the doctor? This Dr. Maurice? What does he say about all this? Mrs. Eunice shook her head negatively. "He wants to admit the boy. Says it's a severe case of post-traumatic selective mutism, that he needs intensive intervention. Mr. Vane is almost convinced." Joanna felt a tightening in her chest. In her 45 years of life, she had seen a lot. Before working in cleaning, she had been a nursing technician for over a decade at an East End community hospital. She knew how to recognize when a diagnosis served the professional more than the patient. On Saturday morning, while cleaning the library windows, Joanna saw Matthew sitting alone in the garden. The nanny, a bored young woman always busy with her phone, supervised from a distance. The boy was motionless, but his eyes followed the movement of the leaves on the trees. An idea began to form in Joanna's mind. Carefully, she approached Mrs. Eunice, who was organizing the pantry. "Mrs. Eunice, do you think Mr. Vane would fire me if I tried a different approach with Matthew?" The housekeeper stared at her in astonishment. "What are you thinking of doing, woman?" "Nothing invasive," Joanna assured. "I just want to try something simple. If it doesn't work, no one needs to know I tried." Eunice hesitated, visibly torn between fear of displeasing her employer and hope of seeing Matthew improve. "Dr. Maurice wouldn't like it," she warned. "Dr. Maurice doesn't need to know," Joanna replied with a knowing smile. That afternoon, while Raphael was locked in his office on an important video conference, Joanna went to the garden with a small bottle and a plastic bubble wand. She cautiously approached Matthew, who was sitting on the wooden bench under the jabuticaba tree. "Hi, Matthew," she said in a low, gentle voice. "May I sit here with you?" The boy didn't answer, but also showed no discomfort. Joanna sat down, leaving a respectful space between them. She began to softly hum the same melody she had heard on the sound system days before, the piano sonata that had made the boy's body relax. As she hummed, she opened the small bottle. The aroma of lavender gently spread on the afternoon breeze. Then she dipped the wand into the solution and blew delicately. Colorful soap bubbles danced in the air, reflecting the sun in small floating rainbows. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, Matthew's head moved, following the path of the bubbles. Joanna continued, alternating between blowing bubbles and humming. Gradually, the boy turned more to observe the iridescent spectacle. "Want to try?" she offered, extending the plastic wand. Silence. But Matthew's eyes were now fixed on hers, the first genuine eye contact he had made in months. "If you want to, just clap your hands once," Joanna suggested, inspired by a sudden intuition. "That way I'll know." Seconds that seemed an eternity passed. Then slowly Matthew's small hands rose and produced a single clapping sound. Joanna's heart raced. She handed him the wand, gently guiding the boy's hands to dip it into the solution. Together they blew a collection of bubbles that floated towards the sky. And then it happened. A smile. Small, hesitant, almost imperceptible, but unequivocally a smile on Matthew's lips. Encouraged, Joanna continued humming the sonata as they made more bubbles. The boy's body was no longer rigid. He leaned forward, animated by the game. "You like this music, don't you?" "Oh," she asked gently. "It's very beautiful." Matthew nodded, a minimal but deliberate movement. "Your mother played it for you, didn't she?" Another clap. A simple code had been established between them. "You know, Matthew, sometimes we get so sad that we forget how to speak, but our feelings find other ways. Through music, smells, colors." She made more bubbles float. "It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss someone." The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he remained present, connected. Joanna risked lightly touching his hand. "When you're ready to talk again, your words will come back. Like soap bubbles. They've always been inside you. They just need the right moment to come out." At that instant, they heard firm footsteps approaching along the stone path. Dr. Maurice was coming towards them, followed by Raphael. The doctor's face showed evident displeasure. "What is going on here?" he asked in a dry tone. Joanna stood up, remaining calm. "We're just making soap bubbles, doctor." Raphael looked perplexed at his son. Matthew still held the plastic wand, and there was an expression on his face that his father hadn't seen in months, a kind of presence, of life in his eyes. "Matthew?" he called hesitantly. The boy looked at his father and then, in an almost inaudible whisper, uttered, "Father." Raphael staggered as if he had received an electric shock. It was the first word his son had spoken since the accident. His eyes filled with tears as he knelt on the grass before Matthew. "Son, you spoke." Dr. Maurice quickly intervened, placing himself between Joanna and the family. "Mr. Vane, this is extremely inappropriate. This employee is not qualified to perform therapeutic interventions. She could be causing irreversible psychological damage." Joanna remained calm but firm. "I didn't perform any intervention, doctor. I merely offered music, the scent of lavender and soap bubbles, things that are part of Matthew's emotional memories." The doctor adjusted his glasses with irritation. "This is an amateur and dangerous approach. I strongly recommend that you prohibit this type of unauthorized interaction. In fact, this only reinforces the urgent need for admission to a controlled environment." Raphael was torn. On one hand, he had just witnessed his son's first genuine reaction in months. On the other hand, the specialist, with all his authority and credentials, warned against that approach. "Joanna, I appreciate your initiative, but I must ask you to restrict yourself to your cleaning duties," he finally said with visible internal conflict. "I understand." "Sir," she replied with dignity. Before walking away, she looked at Matthew and saw fear returning to his eyes, the fear of abandonment, of loss, of emotional emptiness. As she walked back to the house, Joanna made a decision. She wouldn't give up so easily. That boy needed affection much more than diagnoses. He needed someone who saw beyond the clinical case, someone who saw the child behind the silence. And she would be that person, even if it meant facing the powerful Dr. Maurice and Raphael Vane himself. On Sunday morning, Raphael woke with a heavy heart. The brief connection he had witnessed between Matthew and Joanna had planted a seed of hope, but Dr. Maurice's stern words echoed in his mind. What if the employee's approach really caused more harm? What if that whispered "father" was just a coincidence, a meaningless reflex? After breakfast, Dr. Maurice called, his voice conveying urgency. "Mr. Vane, we need to talk about yesterday. I'm on my way to your house." Less than an hour later, the doctor was in Raphael's office, armed with a digital presentation of alarming statistics and case studies on amateur interventions. "I understand your enthusiasm at hearing your son speak," the specialist said, "but we need to be extremely cautious. False hopes can be devastating in the long run." Raphael observed the graphs on the screen, feeling increasingly lost. "Doctor," he said, "father," after 6 months of silence. "Episodic reactions do not constitute structural improvement," Dr. Maurice retorted. "In fact, they may just be responses to momentary sensory stimuli, without any real cognitive integration." The technical terminology made Raphael feel small and ignorant. Who was he, after all, to question the knowledge of a renowned specialist? "St. Teresa's Institute is reserving a spot for Matthew," the doctor continued, "but they need an answer by tomorrow. Other serious cases are on the waiting list." The pressure was almost unbearable. Raphael felt that any decision could be the wrong one. What if we tried a few more sessions here, with the approach that seemed to work yesterday? he suggested hesitantly. Dr. Morris removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose with evident irritation. Mr. Vane, let me be absolutely frank. We are dealing with your son's neuropsychological development. This is not a field for experiments by a cleaning employee without any training. At the Institute, Matthew will have access to state-of-the-art equipment, scientifically validated therapies, and a complete multidisciplinary team. Faced with the relentless argument, Raphael conceded. All right, doctor. I'll sign the admission papers tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the staff room where she slept on weekends, Joanna couldn't stop thinking about Matthew. The expression of abandonment in the boy's eyes when she had to step away haunted her. Determined to better understand what was happening, she called her niece Camilla Sinclair, a young pediatrician who worked with traumatized children in East London. Aunt Jo? What a pleasant surprise, Camilla answered with evident affection in her voice. Mila, I need your help, Joanna replied, briefly explaining the situation. Something is wrong with this diagnosis. The boy responded to sensory stimulation, but the doctor seems determined to admit him. Camilla listened attentively, asking specific questions about Matthew's behaviors and the specialist's recommendations. A year of hospitalization for a 7-year-old child who lost his mother? That seems extremely radical, the pediatrician opined, especially if he has already shown responsiveness. Exactly what I think. But the doctor has convinced the father that any alternative approach is dangerous and amateurish. Camilla was silent for a few moments, thoughtful. Aunt, you said this doctor is recommending St. Teresa's Institute, right? Yes, why? I've heard of that place. It's extremely expensive and has a very pharmacological approach. Let me do some more research on this Dr. Maurice. What's his last name? Fontaine, Dr. Maurice Fontaine. Got it. I'll check a few things and call you back, Camilla promised. In the meantime, keep observing the boy. Note all reactions, no matter how small. After hanging up, Joanna decided to use the rest of Sunday to organize her observations about Matthew. In a small notebook, she meticulously recorded all the patterns she had noticed. The floor tiles, the pauses at the kitchen doorway, the reactions to music and aromas. In the early afternoon, she heard a commotion at the mansion's entrance. From the window of the staff room, she saw Dr. Morris leaving in a hurry, followed by Raphael. The doctor gestured animatedly, and Raphael looked dejected, only nodding occasionally. After the doctor left, Raphael went back inside. Joanna waited a few minutes and then went downstairs, pretending to fetch cleaning supplies. She found Mrs. Eunice in the laundry room, folding sheets with mechanical efficiency. "How's the mood today, Mrs. Eunice?" she asked casually. The housekeeper looked around, making sure they were alone. Not very good. Dr. Maurice came to pressure him. "It seems Mr. Vane is going to sign the papers to admit Matthew tomorrow." The news hit Joanna like a punch, so fast after the first sign of progress. "And Matthew? How is he?" Mrs. Eunice sighed deeply. "He's back to his previous state. Doesn't respond, doesn't speak, doesn't play. He's sitting in the garden, looking at nothing." Joanna thanked her for the information and went up to the garden. Indeed, Matthew was sitting on the same wooden bench as the day before, completely motionless. She approached cautiously, remembering that she had been instructed not to interact with him beyond her cleaning duties. "Hello? Matthew," she said softly, sitting on the bench, but keeping a respectful distance. "I just came to see how you are." The boy showed no reaction. It was as if the connection from the previous day had never existed. At that moment, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Camilla. "Discovered some things. I need to talk to you urgently." Joanna looked once more at Matthew, feeling a pang in her heart, and returned to her room to call back. "Aunt," Camilla's voice was tense. "This Dr. Maurice Fontaine is a member of the administrative board of St. Teresa's Institute. In fact, he's one of the owners." "What?" Joanna felt a chill run down her spine. "Exactly. He has a direct financial interest in every patient he refers there. And what's more, I researched the Institute's results. They have an extremely high rate of continuous medication and a very low rate of full discharge in cases like Matthew's." Indignation made Joanna's blood boil. "That's unethical. It's a clear conflict of interest." "Unfortunately, it's not illegal, as long as there's informed consent. The question is, does the boy's father know about this?" Joanna closed her eyes, trying to control her anger. I'm sure he doesn't. He's desperate, Mila. He'd do anything to help his son. Aunt, I need to see this boy. If what you say is true and he showed a response to appropriate sensory stimulation, it may be that admission is completely unnecessary. But how? I can't just bring an outside doctor without authorization. Camilla thought for a moment. I have an idea. You said you work for a third-party cleaning company, right? Who's your direct supervisor? Regina Albright, the coordinator of Clean and Cub, is why. Perfect. I'll talk to her. Maybe we can create a situation that allows me to enter the house legitimately. Joanna was impressed by her niece's determination. You would do that? Risk your professional reputation for a boy you don't even know? Aunt, Camilla replied seriously, when you told me about this boy only stepping on the center of the floor tiles, I immediately recognized a behavior of seeking security. He's creating safe roots in a world that has collapsed. It's not a symptom of mental illness that needs admission. It's an adaptive response to deep grief. Before they could continue the conversation, Joanna heard a knock on the room door. Joanna. It was Mrs. Eunice's voice. Mr. Vane wants to speak with you. A cold feeling ran through Joanna's stomach. Had someone seen her talking to Matthew in the garden against explicit orders? I'm coming, she replied and whispered into the phone. I have to hang up. Call me later. Raphael awaited her in the office, looking out the window with his hands behind his back. When she entered, he turned slowly. His face was marked by tiredness and doubt. Joanna, I know you've only been working here a few days, but I want to ask you something directly. She nodded. Bracing for the worst. What exactly did you do with my son yesterday? Joanna took a deep breath, deciding it was time for the full truth. Mr. Vane, I merely used elements that were part of Matthew's emotional world before his mother's were passing. The piano music Mrs. Cecilia played, the lavender scent she used, and a simple game of soap bubbles to establish contact without pressure. Raphael observed her intently, as if trying to decipher a complex enigma. And where did you learn this approach? Do you have training in child psychology or something similar? No, sir. But I was a nursing technician for 12 years before working in cleaning. I cared for many traumatized children at the East End Community Hospital. I learned that sometimes what seems like regression or mutism is just a form of protection. Raphael paced the room, visibly restless. Dr. Maurice says amateur interventions can cause irreversible damage. With all due respect, sir, I did not perform any invasive intervention. I merely offered familiar stimuli in a safe environment without pressure. And Matthew responded. He spoke, Raphael murmured, as if still unable to believe it. After 6 months, he said, Father. Yes, sir. And that was no coincidence. It was connection. A heavy silence settled in the office. Raphael seemed to be fighting an intense internal battle. I signed the preliminary documents for the admission, he finally revealed. Dr. Maurice will come tomorrow with the final forms. Joanna's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. It's your decision, sir. I only ask that you consider what you saw with your own eyes, not just what you heard from specialists. Raphael stared at her for a long moment. Dr. Maurice made it clear that I should not allow you to have any more direct contact with Matthew. Joanna nodded, accepting the decision, though her heart broke at the thought of the boy alone in a cold clinic, far from everything familiar to him. I understand, sir. I will respect your decision. May I be excused? He nodded and Joanna headed for the door. As she reached the doorknob, Raphael's voice stopped her. Joanna! She turned. Do you really think my son can improve without admission? Her eyes filled with determination. Not only do I think so, Mr. Vane, I saw it. And you did too. When she closed the office door behind her, Joanna knew she had planted a seed of doubt. Now she needed to act fast before it was too late for Matthew. With determined steps, she returned to her room to call Camilla. A plan began to form in her mind. A plan that could save that boy from the silence imposed not by pain, but by adults who didn't know how to listen to his language. Monday dawned grey in London. Raphael watched from his bedroom window, thick raindrops sliding down the glass, forming irregular trails. Just like his doubts, winding paths with no clear direction. He had spent the night awake, reliving the moment he heard his son's voice after so much silence. How could he ignore that? At the same time, Dr. Maurice's technical arguments were convincing. What if he was risking Matthew's future because of an isolated reaction without real meaning? He went down for breakfast earlier than usual. In the kitchen, he found only Mrs. Eunice preparing the meal. "You're up early today, sir," the housekeeper commented. "I couldn't sleep," Raphael admitted. "Mrs. Eunice, you've known Matthew since he was a baby. What do you honestly think about this admission?" The question caught the elderly woman by surprise. In almost 3 decades serving the family, Raphael had rarely asked her opinion on such personal matters. "Sir," she began, choosing her words carefully, "I don't have the education to comment on medicine, but I know that boy's heart, and I know he misses his mother very much. Perhaps what he needs isn't so many therapies, but to feel that he still has a home." Raphael contemplated the simple yet profound words as he distractedly stirred his coffee. "Thank you for your honesty. Eunice." After breakfast, Raphael went to the garden. Despite the fine drizzle, Matthew was there sitting on the bench under the jabuticaba tree. An employee holding an umbrella remained a few meters away, distracted by her phone. Raphael dismissed the employee and sat beside his son, sharing the umbrella with him. "Hi, son," he said softly. "Daddy misses hearing your voice." Matthew remained motionless, staring fixedly at the wet leaves on the grass. "You know, yesterday I was thinking, you liked the soap bubbles Joanna brought, didn't you?" No response. "Matthew, please," Raphael's voice faltered. "Give me a sign, anything, just so I know what's best for you." The heavy silence was broken only by the drumming of rain on the umbrella. Raphael felt tears stinging his eyes. He was losing his son, even though he had him physically by his side. Inside the house, Joanna finished cleaning the second floor when she received a message from Camilla. "Plan in action," Regina agreed. "We'll be there at 2 p.m. Get ready." Her heart raced. She needed to ensure Raphael was present when they arrived. Going downstairs, she found Mrs. Eunice. "Did Dr. Maurice confirm he's coming this afternoon?" she asked casually. "Yes, at 3 p.m. with the final admission documents," the housekeeper replied with evident sadness in her voice. Perfect, Joanna thought. There would be time to present an alternative before the specialist arrived. At 1:45 p.m., Joanna watched nervously from the utility room window. Finally, a compact car parked by the mansion gate. 2 women emerged. Regina Albright, the coordinator of the cleaning company, a robust woman in her early 50s, and Camilla Sinclair, her niece, a 30-year-old doctor, wearing a discreet professional outfit and carrying a briefcase. The intercom rang, and one of the security guards answered. After a brief conversation, the man came to the utility room. "Joanna, your supervisor is at the gate. Says she needs to do a performance review and brought an occupational health consultant." "Yes, I was expecting them," she replied, trying to sound natural. "Please let them in." As the security guard walked away, Joanna took a deep breath. The first part of the plan had worked. Regina and Camilla were led to the staff room near the kitchen. Joanna greeted them with a tense hug. "It worked," she whispered. "But we need to talk to Mr. Vane before the doctor arrives." Regina, who had been convinced by Camilla of the seriousness of the situation, nodded decisively. "Leave it to me. I have experience dealing with employers." The coordinator asked to speak with Raphael, claiming she needed to discuss contractual matters related to the services provided. Surprisingly, he granted the request, appearing in the staff room minutes later. "Good afternoon," Raphael said formally. "How can I help?" Regina stepped forward, exuding professional authority. "Mr. Vane, I'm Regina Albright, coordinator of Clean and Coburn. This is Dr. Camilla Sinclair, a pediatrician specializing in child trauma, who occasionally collaborates with us on occupational health matters." Raphael frowned, clearly confused by the presence of a pediatrician. "Mr. Vane," Camilla intervened in a calm and professional voice. "Firstly, I want to make it clear that I am not here to interfere in family decisions. I am here because I was informed of a potentially concerning situation from an ethical and medical point of view." Raphael's expression immediately hardened. "If this is about my son, I have specialists handling the case." "Precisely about that. Sir," Camilla continued, unshakable, "I have information about a possible conflict of interest involving Dr. Maurice Fontaine and St. Teresa's Institute." The revelation made Raphael freeze. What kind of conflict of interest? Dr. Fontaine is a member of the administrative board and one of the owners of the institute. He receives a commission for every patient he refers, especially for long-term admissions. Raphael visibly paled. That can't be true. He's one of the most respected neurologists in London, and he remains an excellent neurologist, Camilla assured, extending a folder with documents. But that doesn't eliminate the conflict of interest. Here are the public records of the Institute's corporate structure, as well as independent studies on its therapeutic outcomes. Raphael took the folder with trembling hands. Why are you showing me this? What do you want? It was Joanna who replied. We just want you to make a decision with all the available information and to consider a second medical opinion before admitting your son for a year. Raphael looked at the employee with a mixture of disbelief and resentment. You arranged all this behind my back? Sir, Regina intervened with maternal firmness. Joanna was concerned about the child's well-being. As a company, we support professional ethics above all else. If there's a conflict of interest, you deserve to know. A tense silence hung in the room. Raphael quickly flipped through the documents, his face changing from surprise to indignation. Dr. Maurice never mentioned he owned the institute. He murmured more to himself than to the others. Mr. Vane, Camilla said, softening her tone. I'm not here to discredit Dr. Fontaine's diagnosis. I'm here to offer a free and no-obligation second opinion before you make such an important decision as admitting your son. Raphael raised his eyes from the folder, clearly shaken. And why would you do that? You don't know me, you don't know my son. Because I believe in medical ethics, Camilla replied with sincerity, and because, as a pediatrician who works with traumatized children daily in underserved communities, I know that often there are less invasive approaches that can have surprising results. At that moment, the room door opened and Mrs. Eunice appeared. Distressed. Mr. Vane, Matthew doesn't want to eat lunch. He's sitting on the floor in his room refusing any food. The father sighed heavily. Each day seemed to bring a new difficulty. I'll go up to see him. Mr. Vane, Camilla stepped forward, hesitant. May I accompany you? I promise not to interfere, just observe. Raphael looked at the young doctor, then at Joanna, and finally at the documents in his hands. An internal struggle unfolded on his exhausted face. All right, he finally decided, but only to observe. The four went upstairs in silence. Upon reaching Matthew's room, they found the boy sitting in the middle of the rug, an untouched food tray beside him. His eyes were fixed on the window, through which the still cloudy sky could be seen. Camilla observed the scene with clinical eyes, noticing every detail of the environment and the child's behavior. Son? Raphael called, approaching cautiously. You need to eat something. No response. Raphael looked at Camilla as if to say, you see? The doctor nodded discreetly, asking permission with a gesture to approach a little closer. Hello, Matthew, she said in a calm voice. My name is Camilla. Your father allowed me to meet you today. The boy didn't react, but Camilla noticed a slight movement of his head, indicating he was listening. I noticed you like to look out the window, she continued. Are you waiting for something out there? Silence. You know, when I was little and sad, I also liked to look at the sky. It seemed like the clouds understood how I felt. An almost imperceptible movement of Matthew's fingers on the rug. Camilla attentively observed the room. It was an impeccable environment, but strangely impersonal for a 7-year-old's room. Matthew, I heard your mother used to play the piano for you. Did you like listening? The boy turned his head slightly towards her. A sign. Do you miss the music? Slowly, Matthew raised a hand and clapped once. Raphael held his breath, recognizing the code Joanna had established with his son. Camilla smiled gently. I see. And that lady, Joanna, she sang for you, didn't she? With lavender scent and soap bubbles? Another clap. Did you like it? A firmer clap. Camilla looked at Raphael, who watched the interaction with tear-filled eyes. Mr. Vane, I think your son is communicating very clearly. He misses the things that connected him to his mother. The music, the aromas, the affectionate presence. I don't see concerning neurological signs here, but rather a child in deep grief who has found a way to protect himself. Raphael knelt beside his son, trying to absorb the doctor's words. Matthew, do you miss Mummy? A strong clap, and then, to everyone's surprise, A single tear rolled down the boy's face. "Oh, son," Raphael hugged Matthew's small, rigid body, which slowly began to relax against his father's chest. "Dr. Camilla," Raphael said, still holding his son, "what do you suggest?" "At this moment, I suggest continuity and safety. No admission, no separation. A familiar, predictable environment with sensory stimuli that reconnect him with his emotional memories. And above all, permission to feel. The longing, the sadness, the fear." The mansion's doorbell rang in the distance. Dr. Maurice had arrived with the final documents for the admission. Raphael looked at his son, at Joanna, at Camilla, and finally at the conflict of interest document still in his hand. His expression transformed, gaining a firmness he hadn't shown in months. "Mrs. Eunice," he called decisively, "please tell Dr. Maurice that we need to reschedule. I won't be able to see him today." The housekeeper smiled, relieved, and went to carry out the order. "Joanna," Raphael continued, still embracing his son, "you were right. Thank you for not giving up on Matthew." The employee nodded, moved. "And Dr. Camilla, I'd like to hear more about this alternative approach. Can we talk after Matthew has lunch?" "Certainly," the doctor replied. "And if I may make a suggestion, how about we all have lunch together? In the kitchen, with the smells, the sounds, the normalcy of everyday life." Raphael considered the idea. How long had it been since he shared a normal meal with his son? Everything had become clinical, programmed, medicalized. Great idea. "Matthew, what do you think about eating together in the kitchen today?" An enthusiastic clap sealed the agreement. As they went down to the kitchen, Raphael carrying his son, followed by Joanna, Camilla, and Regina, Mrs. Eunice's phone rang in the entrance hall. It was Dr. Maurice, furious at having been dismissed without explanation. "Dr. Fontaine wants to know when he can reschedule," the housekeeper reported. Meeting the group on the stairs, Raphael exchanged glances with Camilla and then replied with new confidence, "Tell the doctor we'll be in touch. But it won't be necessary to bring the admission documents. We've decided to try a new approach." On the other end of the line, Dr. Maurice protested vehemently. "The doctor says it's a serious mistake." "That you're compromising Matthew's treatment," Eunice reported, covering the phone with her hand. "Tell him I appreciate his concern, but we now have a second medical opinion," Raphael replied, looking gratefully at Camilla. When Eunice hung up, the group continued towards the kitchen. Halfway there, Matthew pointed to a closed door in the hallway, the door to the old music room locked since Cecilia's accident. Raphael stopped, looking at the door with apprehension. Was he ready to reopen that wound? "One step at a time, Mr. Vane," Camilla suggested gently. "We don't have to face everything at once." The father nodded, grateful for the advice, and proceeded to the kitchen with his son in his arms. For the first time in months, he felt there was hope. A hope built not on promises of miraculous cures or expensive treatments, but on something much simpler and deeper: understanding, respect, and love. The following days brought subtle but significant changes to the Vane mansion. Under Dr. Camilla's guidance, a new kind of routine began to establish itself, no longer centered on medical appointments and rigid therapies, but on affectionate and predictable rituals that offered emotional security to Matthew. The first and most important change was Joanna's official permanence. Raphael, recognizing the special bond she had established with his son, offered her a new position, Matthew's personal caregiver, with residence in the mansion and appropriate remuneration for the role. Regina, understanding the importance of the situation, released Joanna from her contract with the cleaning company without any penalty. "I never thought I'd end my career as a child caregiver," Joanna commented, as she arranged her few belongings in the larger, more comfortable room Raphael had assigned to her, near Matthew's. "You're not just a caregiver," Mrs. Eunice corrected, helping her with the clothes. "You're the person bringing life back to that child, and to his father too." The second change was the adaptation of the mansion's spaces. The clinical therapy room, with its cold and impersonal equipment, was dismantled. In its place, Raphael allowed Joanna and Camilla to create a sensory space, a cozy environment with colorful cushions, soft lights, simple musical instruments, and a small water fountain that produced a calming sound. Gradually, elements of Matthew's life before Cecilia's accident began to reappear. Following Camilla's recommendations, Raphael authorized the careful retrieval of objects, photos, and memories that had been banned during the poorly processed grief. On Wednesday, after lunch, which was now always shared in the kitchen, Matthew surprised everyone. Using his clapping system to communicate, he asked to see photos of his mother. "Are you sure, son?" Raphael asked, hesitant. A firm clap. Raphael retrieved a digital album he had kept in his office safe. With trembling hands, he turned on the device. The first image showed Cecilia smiling at the piano, with a 5-year-old Matthew sitting beside her on the bench, trying to imitate her movements on the keys. The boy looked at the photo for a long time, then raised his hand and with a small finger gently touched his mother's face on the screen. His eyes were full of tears, but they were no longer tears of contained despair, they were tears of recognized longing. "You know, Matthew," Raphael said, his voice choked, "Mummy would love to see you playing the piano again." The boy looked at his father intently, then pointed towards the hallway, where the locked door of the music room was. "Do you want to go there?" Raphael asked, feeling his heart race. A clap. Raphael exchanged glances with Joanna and Camilla, who watched the scene in respectful silence. "I think it's time," Camilla said gently. "But it doesn't have to be now, not all at once. We can start with short visits." That same afternoon, Raphael unlocked the music room for the first time in 6 months. Before taking Matthew, he went in alone, accompanied only by Joanna, who opened the windows to ventilate the room. The hall was spacious, with a double ceiling height and perfect acoustics. In the center, covered by a white cloth like a sleeping ghost, was the grand Steinway piano that Cecilia had loved so much. On the walls, photos of her in various concerts, some trophies and diplomas from renowned conservatories. On a shelf, meticulously organized sheet music. Was she very talented? Joanna asked, watching Raphael gently touch the cloth covering the piano. "Brilliant," he replied with a sad smile. "She could have had an international career, but she chose to stay in the UK. She used to say our music had a soul that Europe couldn't offer." With a decisive movement, Raphael pulled away the cloth, revealing the magnificent instrument, still impeccable under a layer of dust. "Do you think we're ready for this?" he asked, unsure. "The question, Mr. Vane, isn't being ready," Joanna replied with the simple wisdom that characterized her. "It's allowing pain to transform into something else, into living memory, into continuity." He nodded, grateful for the clarity. When Matthew entered the hall, led by Camilla, his eyes immediately fixed on the uncovered piano. For a moment, everyone feared a regression, that the emotional shock would be too strong. But what happened surprised even the experienced pediatrician. The boy walked slowly to the instrument, climbed onto the bench, still too high for him, and placed his small fingers on the keys. With impressive delicacy for a 7-year-old, he played the first notes of a simple melody, the same lullaby Joanna used to hum to him. Raphael fell to his knees, overcome with emotion. Joanna and Camilla exchanged astonished glances. Mrs. Eunice, watching from the doorway, brought her hands to her face, crying without any discretion. "He remembers," Raphael whispered. "He remembers everything." In the days that followed, the piano became the center of Matthew's recovery. Every day, for short and monitored periods, he went to the music room and played. At first only fragmented melodies, then increasingly structured. In parallel, Camilla conducted playful sessions that allowed for the gradual expression of feelings. Instead of directly asking about his mother or the loss, she used symbolic games, drawings, and stories. Matthew, still primarily using his clapping system to communicate, began to express increasingly complex emotions. "He's creating his own language," Camilla explained to Raphael during one of their regular follow-up meetings. "1 clap for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know." And now he adds gestures, expressions, drawings. It's extraordinary how the human mind finds alternative paths. "But will he ever speak normally again?" Raphael asked, still concerned. "Probably yes. But the important thing is not to force it. Matthew's selective mutism is a response to trauma, not a permanent condition. As he feels safe, the words will return. We already saw that when he said father." On Friday of that week, while Joanna helped Matthew bathe, Raphael's phone rang. It was Dr. Maurice, who had been calling daily since being dismissed, increasingly insistent and irritated. "Mr. Vane, we need to talk urgently," the doctor said, without preamble. What you're doing is extremely irresponsible. I have reports from several specialists confirming the need for admission. Raphael took a deep breath before replying, Doctor, I appreciate your concern, but my son is progressing with the new approach. Furthermore, I was informed about your financial involvement with St. Teresa's Institute. A tense silence followed the declaration. That is completely irrelevant, the doctor finally retorted. My connection to the Institute does not influence my medical recommendations in any way. I am genuinely concerned about Matthew's well-being. Then why did you never mention this conflict of interest? It's not a conflict. It's a professional partnership. Raphael remained calm, surprising himself. Dr. Maurice, I am not questioning your professional competence. I have simply decided to follow a second medical opinion from a pediatrician from the East End. That's absurd. She has no specialization whatsoever for cases like Matthew's. The condescension in the doctor's voice hit Raphael as a final clarification. Dr. Camilla Sinclair has years of experience with traumatized children. And more importantly, she has put my son's well-being above any personal interest. Her methods are working, Doctor. Matthew is playing the piano again, communicating, processing his grief in a healthy way. These are just superficial reactions. They don't mean real recovery. I respect your opinion, Doctor. But the decision is made. When he hung up, Raphael felt an immense relief, as if he had removed a weight he didn't even know he was carrying. On Saturday morning, the house woke to a different aroma. Pancakes. In the kitchen, Joanna had set up a small cooking station, with Matthew standing on a chair, helping to mix the batter. Good morning, Raphael said, surprised by the scene. Matthew turned and, to his father's astonishment, spoke. Good morning, Father. 3 words. Clear, firm, conscious. Raphael froze in the doorway, unable to believe what he had just heard. Joanna smiled, satisfied but not surprised. We're making pancakes, Matthew continued, his voice still low, a little rusty but unmistakably present. With chocolate syrup. Raphael approached slowly, fearing that any sudden movement might break the spell. Can I help? He asked, his voice trembling with emotion. You can set the table, his son replied with a comical seriousness. As he set plates and cutlery, Raphael observed the interaction between Joanna and Matthew. The simplicity of the moment. Flour, eggs, milk, a child standing on a chair, the sweet smell of pancakes, contrasted dramatically with the months of intensive therapies, expensive consultations and complex diagnoses. After breakfast, the boy asked to go to the music room. There he sat at the piano and for the first time called his father to sit beside him on the bench. Mummy taught me this one, he said, and began to play Dvořák's Song to the Moon, a simple but deeply beautiful melody. Raphael, sitting beside his son, let the tears flow freely. They were no longer tears of despair or guilt, but of acceptance and love. When Matthew finished, his father hugged him gently. She would be very proud of you, son. Matthew nodded, then looked towards the door, where Joanna watched in silence. Can Joe stay with us forever? He asked with direct childish sincerity. Raphael looked at the woman who had transformed his house and returned his son's voice. It wasn't just gratitude he felt, it was a deep respect, and he now realized the beginning of genuine affection. If she wants to, he replied, she will be very welcome. Joanna moved, entered the hall and sat on the other side of Matthew on the piano bench. How about we play together? She suggested. You on the piano, me singing, and your father can try to accompany. Thus, in the golden light of that spring Saturday, music once again filled the Vane mansion. Imperfect notes, hesitant voices, occasional laughter when someone made a mistake. Sounds of healing, of new beginnings, of life resuming its natural flow. Outside the gate, Dr. Maurice observed the scene through the hall window. He had come personally to try to convince Raphael one last time, but what he saw now left him speechless. Silently, he put the admission documents that would never be signed back into his folder and left, defeated by the simplicity of an approach that none of his expensive diplomas had taught him. Inside the mansion, oblivious to his presence and departure, father, son, and caregiver continued their song of new beginnings. The imperfect melody echoed through the previously silent corridors, chasing away ghosts, healing wounds, building bridges over the abyss of loss. It was just the beginning of a long journey of recovery, but now they walked together in the same rhythm, creating their own music of healing. 3 years passed since that Saturday of pancakes and piano. The Vane mansion, once a monument of glass and marble to solitude and grief, had transformed into a true home. On a sunny Sunday morning, the now lively garden hosted a small celebration. A colourful table with cake, soft drinks and chocolate fudge balls had been set up under the old jabuticaba tree. Colourful balloons danced in the gentle breeze, and a handmade banner announced, "Happy birthday, Sophia, 3 years old." Matthew, now 10, ran across the lawn, chased by 3 school friends, their laughter echoing through the garden. Raphael, with a few more grey hairs, but with lively, rested eyes, adjusted chairs next to Joanna, who supervised the final party details. "Do you think we put too many chocolate fudge balls?" he asked, observing the laden table. "There's no mathematical possibility of that, Mr. Vane," Joanna joked, "especially with those children from the shelter arriving." Raphael smiled, admiring the woman who, from a simple employee, had become an essential part of their rebuilt family. The 3 years had cemented a partnership that began as gratitude, transformed into deep friendship, and finally blossomed into a mature and tranquil love. 2 years prior, they had formalized their union in an intimate ceremony in the garden itself, with Matthew as a proud best man. 6 months later, when Raphael asked Matthew how he would feel about having a little brother or sister, the boy jumped for joy. Sophia was born the following spring, bringing even more light to the house that had already rediscovered joy. "The sweets are here," announced Mrs. Eunice, bringing another tray. At 63, she had firmly rejected all suggestions of retirement, and Dr. Camilla just called. "She's running late, but she's definitely coming." Camilla Sinclair had become a close family friend. Her professional intervention with Matthew had lasted only a few months, but the personal bond remained. She now coordinated a treatment center for traumatized children in the East End, for which the Vane Foundation, an initiative created by Raphael to finance humanized approaches to child mental health, was the main supporter. "Father, come see Sophia," Matthew called, pointing to little Sophia, who had escaped the nanny's watch and was trying to climb one of the slide steps. Raphael ran to help his daughter, picking her up. With her dark curls and lively eyes, Sophia was a perfect mix of Raphael and Joanna, but had a personality all her own, determined and curious from her first steps. "Not so fast. Young lady," Raphael said, lifting her into the air and making her giggle. "It's still too high for you." "No, it's not," Sophia protested, with characteristic stubbornness. "Matt has already said I can." "Matthew," Raphael corrected, looking amused at his older son. "You're not teaching her anything too dangerous, are you?" Matthew shrugged with a mischievous smile. "I'm just teaching her to be brave, Father. Like Joe taught me." Raphael felt his heart warm. The relationship between Matthew and Sophia was one of the greatest joys of his life. The protective affection of the older brother. The younger sister's adoration for Matt, as she had called him since she started speaking. The guests began to arrive. First, some of Matthew's school friends with their parents. Then a small bus parked at the gate, bringing 15 children from the New Dawn shelter, an institution that housed vulnerable minors, another project supported by the Vane Foundation. Matthew ran to greet the children from the shelter, especially Peter, an 8-year-old boy who had experienced a trauma similar to his own and with whom he had developed a special friendship. The boy had lost his parents in a car accident and, like Matthew in the past, had stopped speaking. During a visit to the shelter, Matthew had done something surprising. He sat next to Peter with a small bottle of soap bubbles and, patiently, taught him the clapping code that Joanna had created for him years ago. The gesture of a rare empathy in a child had deeply moved Raphael and Joanna. "Peter, come meet my little sister," Matthew shouted, pulling his friend by the hand. The party officially began when Camilla finally arrived, accompanied by Regina, the former coordinator of the cleaning company, who was now a volunteer at the treatment center. "Sorry for the delay," Camilla said, hugging Joanna. "We had a small emergency at the center, but everything's fine now." "The important thing is that you came," Joanna replied. Sophia wouldn't stop asking for Aunt Mila. As the children played and the adults chatted, Raphael observed the scene with deep gratitude. His life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined 3 years ago. Cecilia's loss would never cease to be a pain, but now it was a pain he knew how to carry, no longer an abyss that paralyzed him, but a scar that had transformed him. After Happy Birthday and the distribution of sweets, Raphael went up to the music room to fetch something. Upon returning, he clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Everyone, before the toys and the total mess this garden is about to become, he announced, provoking laughter. We have a small presentation. Matthew has prepared something special for his sister. The boy, with a mixture of shyness and pride, stood beside his father, holding a small portable keyboard. Sophia, he said, looking at his little sister, who watched attentively from Joanna's lap. When I was small like you, I couldn't speak for a while. I was very sad because my first mother had gone to heaven. A respectful silence fell over the garden. Even the younger children seemed to sense the importance of the moment. Then Joe came and helped me find music inside me again, and now I want to give you this gift. It's a song that Mummy Cecilia used to play for me, and that I've rewritten a little bit for you. Matthew began to play on the small keyboard. It was a simplified version of Dvořák's Song to the Moon, but with some altered notes that made it more joyful, more childish. Raphael, beside his son, accompanied him with a guitar he had learned to play in recent years. Sophia watched fascinated, her little eyes sparkling with enchantment. When the music ended, she clapped enthusiastically, drawing emotional smiles from all the adults present. More, Matt. More, she asked, jumping on Joanna's lap. There'll be more later, Matthew promised. Now it's time to play. The children ran to the toys, and the party continued lively until dusk. When the last guest said goodbye, the Vane family, Raphael, Joanna, Matthew, and Sophia sat on the veranda to watch the sunset. Father, Matthew said as Sophia dozed in Joanna's lap, exhausted after all the excitement, did you know Peter spoke today? Raphael looked at his son in surprise. Really? He spoke? Yes, Matthew confirmed, proud. When we were playing hide and seek. He said, found you when he found me behind the tree. It was quiet, but I heard it. Joanna and Raphael exchanged emotional glances. That's wonderful, son, Raphael said, running his hand through Matthew's hair. You helped your friend a lot. Actually, Joanna intervened softly, you did for him what I tried to do for you. You showed him that you understood his pain, that you respected his time, but also that you believed he could find his voice again. Matthew smiled. Pleased with the comparison? It's because we can only give what we receive, right, Joe? The wisdom contained in that simple sentence deeply touched the adults. Exactly, Joanna agreed. Care is a language learned by being cared for. And taught by caring, Raphael completed, taking her hand across the table. They remained silent for a few minutes, contemplating the colors of the sky that gradually transformed from intense orange to the deep blue of the first stars. Oh, I almost forgot, Raphael said suddenly. I received an email from Dr. Maurice today. Joanna raised her eyebrows, surprised. In the 3 years that had passed, the neurologist had never contacted them directly again. And what did he want? Apparently, he left St. Teresa's Institute. He's forming a new clinic with a multidisciplinary approach, less focused on admission. And he wants our partnership for a pilot project of the foundation. That's unexpected, Joanna commented. People change, Matthew observed, with the profound simplicity that sometimes surprised adults. Just like I changed, Raphael smiled at his son. You're right, son, and I think we'll accept his proposal. Everyone deserves a second chance. At that moment, Sophia woke in Joanna's lap, rubbing her sleepy eyes. I want music, she asked, yawning. I want Matt's music. Matthew promptly stood up. Let's go to the piano, then. It's better than the keyboard. The boy took his sister's hand and together they went up to the music room, leaving Raphael and Joanna alone on the veranda. Who would have thought, Raphael murmured, watching his children walk away, that the cleaning employee humming in the hallway would change our lives forever? Joanna smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. And who would have thought that serious, controlling businessman would become such a present father and such a loving husband? Raphael embraced her, grateful for all the transformations they had lived through together. I think, deep down, we all need the same thing, he reflected. Someone who sees beyond our pain, who respects our time, but who also shows us the way back. The way back home Joanna completed, her eyes shining in the golden twilight. From inside the house, the first notes of Matthew's song for Sophia began to sound. It was no longer a melody of farewell, like the original Song to the Moon, but a celebration of continuity, of love that persists even after loss, of music that re-emerges after silence. Raphael and Joanna remained on the veranda, hands clasped, hearts full, as the soft melody enveloped the house like an embrace. The piano that had once been a symbol of absence was now the pulsating heart of that home, reminding everyone that healing doesn't come from eliminating pain, but from transforming it into something new, beautiful, and meaningful. And so, in the mansion that was once a sanctuary of silence, the music continued, imperfect but authentic, like every true story of new beginnings. End of story, dear listeners. We hope the story of Raphael, Matthew, and Joanna has deeply touched your hearts. To follow this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about healing, new beginnings, and the transformative power of genuine care. Find it here by clicking the link on the left. If this narrative about the silent language of love and understanding awakened something in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like to this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life, invisible wounds, and unexpected paths to healing. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what moment in this story touched your heart the most. We look forward to your participation as we continue this journey of stories that echo beyond words.